Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Monday, October the 28th, 2024 at 6 p.m. With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Oblinus. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Remind everyone there's conflict of interest forms in the middle of the table. If you have a conflict this evening, please fill it in and pass it in to the clerk. Stating the reason, and with that, we'll move on to item number 4. New business, item number 1, rezoning introduction, 502 Sanatorium Road, Salisbury, PID 009564333. We have a guest of honor this evening. How are you tonight?
Video. Awesome.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good evening. My name is Sam Durand. I'm the planner with Plant 360. And so for this application, I'll be presenting the introduction to council on behalf of Jenna Stewart, who is another planner. So I'll be going through it on her behalf. But yes, it's a rezoning application to rezone from rural area zone to the commercial industrial zone. That's PID 009564333. So yeah, as we said, rezoning from rural area to commercial industrial use in the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan to permit a microcultivation facility for cannabis production. That's one important distinction to make on this slide is that this proposal is under the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan, not under the village of Salisbury or the town of Salisbury zoning bylaw. So just a slide here on the location of the property along Sanatorium Road there. The little inset map on the right-hand side is just a blow up, a zoomed in version of the one on the left. So it's about 6.5 kilometers, almost 7 kilometers outside of the town of Salisbury. That's right. So in this Westmoreland Albert rural plan, we have some policy to talk about commercial industrial development. So I've copied a few of those policies onto this slide. I don't think that these policies are necessary to read through completely. I think the main takeaway that you want to get from these policies is that there is policy in the plan that talks about how these activities are regulated. Some of the ones under C is that it needs to meet federal, provincial legislation, setbacks, buffers from property lines, things like that. So this type of development is permitted in the region. It just needs to meet the standards of the plan and of the bylaws. So yeah, just to confirm that this property is zoned in the rural area zone, which is a typical zone we'd have for most of rural southeast, and permits residential uses as well as have a range of other agricultural and uses that you find in rural New Brunswick. So with regards to cannabis, in the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan, the rural area zone allows outdoor cannabis production as of right on every lot that's zoned rural area. The commercial industrial zone is the only zone in that bylaw that allows cannabis production in an indoor facility. So what we're talking about today in this application is it's a vacant lot today, and what they're hoping to do is build a new purpose-built facility for indoor cannabis production. So if they wanted to do this, I guess, outdoors, that would be as of right today, but because they're doing it indoors or it's proposed indoors, that's why they're coming for the rezoning application. This is the site plan that they've submitted to us. This is their plan. According to the information that we have so far, it looks like they meet all of those zoning requirements in the CI zone. They've shown kind of a treed buffer around the edge of the building there, and it would be planned that those trees would be retained. So there'd be existing buffers between the neighboring properties. Here's a couple of photos of the site from earlier in the summer.
Just the curiosity, because that has a parking lot, are they planning on having sales there?
So no, there won't be any. They're not planning to have sales at this location. It's just for production. I think they estimate they'll have 2 to 3 employees who would go to the site.
Okay.
So I guess this is the one look down the road from either direction, and this photo is looking onto the site. So I guess that's where the driveway would be in the future. But yeah, vacant land out in rural New Brunswick. And then we also process have consulted with provincial departments that may have a may have some relevant information for the application. So you'll see on your screen the folks that we have contacted: Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, Air Sciences, Climate Change Adaptation, Watercourse and Wetlands Alteration, so people building near surface water features, archaeology, healthy environments, as well as Petty Kodiak Fire. In this case, the boundaries for the fire service area actually falls within Petty Kodiak and North Salisbury. So we've reached out to all of these folks and we haven't received any comments stating any concerns with this application. So I guess just to kind of summarize this application, it's not located in an existing residential node. It's in a rural area. Applicant is proposing a 30 by 50 building used for indoor micro cultivation of cannabis. These types of projects are licensed through Health Canada. So there's a separate set of standards that they have to meet. And Health Canada has also, in this particular case, Health Canada limits the size of the production facility to 200 square meters. So that includes, I guess, not just the horizontal. If you can imagine them stacking cannabis on top of each other vertically, it's that total area. So they couldn't have 200 square meters and doubled again on another vertical level, which would make it 400 meters. It's 200 square meters of total growing area, I guess. And then the applicant finally has indicated plans for odor control, water consumption, and anticipates minimal traffic because, to your question, it won't be a sales location. And like I said, these things are also licensed through Health Canada separately from this process. So the decision before you today, this is the very start of the rezoning process. So we are considering passing a resolution to formally start the process, set the date for a public hearing, and seek the written views of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. So you have two options to either accept or deny this resolution. Okay, thanks.
And we just have a tweak to the time of the public hearing if council wants to pass the resolution. So I have it in writing here, so you can go grab it at the printer, but the only change is that it would change from 6 to 7 because it's a normal council meeting. So we'll leave that. That caveat. And do you want motion now? Our usual process, we motion first and then questions if there are,
Sure.
if that's okay. If someone want to move.
Okay, so I can just read like what's here?
Yeah, you could read it from here if you want. It's the same, other than just make sure you say 7 PM. and say
Got it.
6.
And when I say 6, make me change it. Okay. Whereas council has considered an application from Ryan Sleever to consider rezoning of the property known as 502 Sanatorium with PID 00956433 from rural area to commercial industrial. Be it resolved that the council of town of Salisbury directs that the appropriate bylaw be prepared to amend the zoning bylaw as it pertains to the above noted change, that the proposed bylaw be referred to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for their views, that the requirements of the Community Planning Act be fulfilled with respect to the proposed rezoning, and sets the council meeting on Monday, December 9th, 2024 at 7 PM in the council chambers at the Municipal Office, 56 Douglas Street, Salisbury, New Brunswick, as the date, time, and place for the public hearing of consideration of objections to the proposed bylaw. So moved. Seconded.
So moved by Councillor Thorne, seconded by Councillor Colwell. Questions? Motion.
One question, of comment. So this sort of strikes near and dear to me from the perspective of, I wouldn't be here if not for a very related situation, literally across the street from where I live and where a lot of the residents live in Ward 4. Anyway, long story, I'll try to make it as brief as possible, is the individuals who applied for zoning did very much the same thing as was going on here. But in those days, it was, of course, there was no town involved. It was under the rural entity. The residents, there was some residents who were advised, but because of the fact that there's still a fair distance between us, a few residents were advised, and like I could almost throw a couple of stones and hit the house. We were not. Nobody on our street was advised. Literally on Christmas Day, one of the people who was advised went and knocked on all the residents' doors to let them know there was a meeting within a couple of weeks. the public meeting. We, needless to say, there was an awful lot of people that were brought together. And we all went to the meeting, which they didn't expect anybody to be there. It was a major snowstorm that day, and we went to Lions Club in Moncton. It was standing room only with the people who were there to object. Needless to say, there was a lot of objections to having an indoor cannabis location in the ward, or at that time Coverdale Parish. And a lot of these issues came up: water, odor. Is this something that we want in our community? If this is something that is approved, what's to stop many others from asking for exactly the same thing for indoor cannabis facilities? And what does that do to the nature of the community? And certainly, I think we have to ask ourselves that same question here. Because at the end of the day, if you say yes to this one, how can you say no to anyone else? Even the individuals potentially whose application was eventually denied by the province. I can tell you, if it got anywhere close to some residential areas, we'd be hearing it from residents pretty loud and clear. The other issue is who's gonna develop near our cannabis and indoor cannabis facility. I know that some of our residents, it's all anecdotal, but we have residents who have major issues during the summer with the odor from just the outdoor cannabis that's grown, and whatever is indoor, whatever they have approved from the indoor. For me, I think that I look at this and I think we're trying to determine what we want this town to be and to be known for. And we're looking at lots of development in and around the town. We still have to really discuss what we want for the area outside of Ward 3. And I think, it's a little, I would be strongly against approving this at this point in time until we get to the point where we want to have that kind of conversation. I certainly think it requires this is one of those things where we need to get some feedback from residents as well. Not just the residents that are within whatever it is, 100 meters or 100 yards of where this is, where we're looking to put something like this. And I really think that it's very premature for us to have this kind of conversation. As I said, you're just opening up a bit of a Pandora's box. I can tell you that a couple of years ago, my wife and I went to visit family in Ontario. We happened to be in the States, driving back on the 401 to visit family in the Windsor area. And we went through Leamington, and we drove through literally on Highway 77 through Leamington and up to Tilbury, miles and miles and miles of nothing but greenhouses. It had all kinds of vegetables in it, but it had an awful lot of cannabis, and not to many of the residents' approval. They have issues with water that I don't know whether they ever solved for, because it does take up an awful lot of water. But once you open the Pandora's box to it, be prepared for somewhat of the same thing. All I'm saying is, I think we need a lot more thought about something like this before we would ever approve it. From my perspective, I would strongly vote against it at this point in time, because I don't think there are some things that I think we need to look at, whether it's new homes, residential, retail businesses and other businesses. But this is going to have an impact on that area, and potentially a fairly significant impact on the town itself. And there's a lot of land out there. I went on the PID, there's a lot of cheap land out there. I can tell you one thing, if we approve this, a lot of that land, if it hasn't already been bought up for that purposes, it will be. So in any case, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I guess the question, on water that Councillor Detory brings up would be, we just had a developer that needs to provide a comprehensive water study to do work in our community itself. They're just making broad statements that there won't be much consumption. So without any restrictions or regulatory around those type of things, how can we control Councillor Tory's point on right down that road? Continual
Yes,
indoor grow ups, because once we do change this, it will open the door for many. And then the other, I'll get that answer in a second, but the other part would be the Albert Westmoreland plan was put in place by the planner with rationale and reasoning for that. This was not zoned for that. So we've not, as a council, had the individual that developed this plan along with the province that came into place before this council came to be, because it was put into legislation prior to amalgamation. So it would be as well nice for this council to understand that plan to the full extent, what it means for rural residents. Is my opinion, before we start making changes that are gonna affect what this is gonna mean to that, because this will impact the whole plan. Because once we start opening the door up, we're opening up across the region. So I guess my question would be on water first.
sure, yeah. With the water, I didn't put it in the slides, but I believe that Jenna, the liters per day in the staff report, you can check the numbers. I believe it's somewhere around 500 liters per day, something like that. You can check what it is. But yeah, so these type of things are regulated by the provincial government in New Brunswick, the Environmental Impact Assessment Branch. So we contacted them about this project and asked this question, is about the water use and whether it requires a second look and this type of just a whole process in place for doing these impact assessments. They've reviewed the project, and with the amount of water that they're using, it's not required. It's not a substantial amount of water. With regards to the Westmoreland Albert Rural Plan, yes, of course, important. It's a different regulation than the town of Salisbury bylaw, and it was adopted kind of at large across the whole region. So this bylaw affects not only you in Salisbury, but also Maple Hills, Fundy, Albert, and kind of the whole southeast region. So we're kind of getting into a place now where some of these municipalities are starting to update their own municipal plans. However, with regards to this application, yeah, as of today, any rural lot in the Westmoreland Albert plan that's zoned rural area can have the cannabis production in an outdoor facility as of right. So they could walk in tomorrow with a building permit and put it outside. I guess I'm not an expert on this matter, but from what I understand, in terms of odor control and some of these concerns, you're directly comparing 200 square meters of indoor production and 200 square meters of outdoor production. There will be less odor and overall less impact in the indoor facility because there's, I guess, mechanisms in place to control that type of thing. But yeah.
And we, I believe, rezoned by the Irving, which was the other plan as well.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I just looked, I don't remember the full extent of how much it was going into, but Lori in 2023 at the very start March, so it feels like an eternity ago, but almost years ago now, did come into a kind of plan 360 101 presentation. It mentions that she talked about the war, but I'm not sure to what extent, but it was addressed to a certain extent, and there was only one other rezoning we've had under the work right now. Yeah.
This will require a first and second reading and a third reading.
It requires first the public hearing.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, maybe you can explain how the process works. This
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's a done deal. This
Yeah.
means whether you will
Yeah.
proceed with the public hearing and the entire process. That's not,
So the decision today is not to approve the project or not, it's just whether or not we're starting the process of asking the public. So if you pass the resolution, then the first step will be that it will go to another separate committee, the Southeast Regional Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. So they will also review this application and all the information and give you their written views on the application. Then there'd be a public presentation and a public hearing where people from the public would be welcome to come and provide their comments to you before you make your final decision, before you get first reading.
There's no public presentation on this one, I don't think, is there?
Okay, my bad.
Yeah, no public presentation on this one.
Yeah, sorry.
So just the public hearing?
Yeah.
Just the public hearing.
I know it was mentioned about, there was some ideas or thoughts or plans about odor control. Do you know what those were?
Yeah, again, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't know
It's okay, I'm not.
mechanics of it all, but yeah, the applicant has suggested that this is a plan, and I think it's something as well that's regulated by Health Canada. But basically, I think they'll have some kind of ventilation system and some kind of filters. And I think in the staff reports, it's something like carbon or charcoal filters or something. Intended to reduce odor.
I don't see the staff report for this one in our file. Did we look for it? We have it for the second one, but I didn't see it for this one. I was just looking for the water. I have multiple questions. The rural area, are there houses, like, I don't know where this is, are there houses around it, like lots of houses around it, or is it just?
Not just,
No, but I think that's the,
Okay.
Joe did check it out, and we
Okay.
checked on the weekend.
they're,
What does it deter future house
Yeah, yeah.
building around it?
That's so does the lot size,
Marty?
the lot size in the rural areas and subdividing also deters housing.
Well, that was my other point on the Albert Westmoreland plan, is to really bring councils up to speed on it. It came in place beforehand, and I constantly get complaints from rural residents that need 5 acres of land for a home, and yet we can just go do other things.
it was part of the rural plan, right at the very beginning, states that the intention of the rural plan is to protect rural land, and to keep rural.
Yes, which was the point.
That was the
So
point.
that was, yeah, so I guess that's from the council, we just had another discussion just on another area of our former village, talking about, how are we gonna, to Councilor Tory's point on how are we gonna grow it, what is our long-term vision, what is our long-term plan?
Sure.
So the Westmoreland Albert plan was bringing up, was put into place without consultation of,
Yeah,
with the residents and.
Oh, no, that's not, it was in consultation with the residents of the rural area,
Right.
not of
I know,
Farmerville,
right.
because it doesn't apply to Farmerville.
Yeah, well, there wasn't very many of us on, I can tell you, John, because
Multiple times.
yeah, so was I, when they were doing the virtual. And,
Well, this was in they had what came out to, meetings for them.
well, when they did when they redid the plan, which they did shortly before.
Yeah,
6 months before.
6 months before, there was a few of us that were on the calls for it.
Mhm.
But it was more or less, just updating the plan,
And in no
And-
time was it ever said
and-
they're gonna take all these areas and bring them together.
yeah.
And then amalgamate.
No,
And then amalgamate
that's
them
a
under the
separate
new-
issue
under the
altogether.
municipality.
Yeah,
So I
that's-
guess,
To my question, sorry, I just really want to ask this question. Do you know in the timeline of redoing, like, how you guys have your schedule of amalgamating the plans, like for municipalities that had local service districts? Like,
Yeah.
when does Salisbury fall into that? Like, if we want to sit down and have a whole view of like what we want for those rural zones or boards, what does that timeline look like? Is that 2 or 3 years away?
so I don't know if I'm in the best place to answer that question.
Yeah.
Austin?
I can answer.
Austin?
So I'll stress with what Lori Bickford reminds me every time I ask about this, is that it's a consolidation. So it's not a full rezoning process or a full zoning bylaw update. So it's a consolidation.
So we're just taking what's already zoned and moving it into our
Yes,
plan.
yeah,
Got it.
and addressing any inconsistencies. So let's say there was a definition of rural in the WARP and the former village bylaw that had discrepancies. Council would have the option to say, here are 2 definitions, what one are you going with?
Uh-huh.
That would be the process that we undertake.
Mhm.
We could hypothetically be very low on the list because our zoning bylaw is new.
Yes.
But we're looking at doing a initial conversation with council in December on starting that consolidation, subject to Lori's availability. But,
Mhm.
we're pushing, so that it can be done, next year before building permit season, basically. Next year is our hope.
So following on that question, sorry, I know you have another question.
Fine,
but I wanna
it's
build on
fine,
that.
it's a comment, so it's fine.
If council wants to do a full review instead of a consolidation.
We're
are we able
years
to do
out.
that?
You're at the bottom of will be at the bottom of the list, because there's other municipalities that haven't updated their former municipality zoning bylaw for over 10 years. Like they're long overdue.
If you want to get it done, you have to consolidate.
Yes,
Mhm.
or we can pay a gazillion dollars to an external consultant that's not Plan 360, which we would not recommend. But technically that is an option. Wouldn't be something that I think would be prudent, but we could do it that way. Yeah.
Okay, so to follow up on that, my last comment is this. I think because we are so many years away from having council sit down and look at the entire zoning of the full municipality, I think we owe it to the public to have the public hearing, to hear what their thoughts are about this. And then I'm also wondering, I know that there's not, because there's no residential no houses around there, you're gonna send out your letters to trees. So can we post it on our social media to say that the public hearing is happening on this day and this is where it is, so that people know, not just,
Just because there are no
Do our
houses,
own, like,
doesn't mean they're
3
not
to
land.
4
The landowner-
right,
the
okay,
landowners are
great point, yes. So, but
Very-
we could go above and beyond what legislation says we're required to do for a public hearing.
And I
Which
have
we
a
will-
hunch-
we
I have
will-
a hunch you know who the landowner is in that area. but-
Yeah.
I don't think, we have the mailing labels, I don't think it would, anyways, I'm not gonna say them on the record, but I don't think that it's, who you would assume, but.
Okay.
but to Stephanie's
The-
point, we would want to at least like reach the next.
Which we still would, very similar to the, like, there's a certain kind of minimum requirement. We still, with public hearings, we have to post on the website legally, like
Right.
Planter 60 will give us the wording tomorrow or in the next couple
But like,
days.
nobody's going there to find it.
No,
We-
and then we will post on social beyond that
Yeah.
as we have with our last rezoning.
Mhm.
So it's put in the
Um,
paper too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so we go above and beyond.
Yeah.
Gold
Yeah.
star for
Yeah.
town of Salisbury.
Yeah. I will also mention on the staff report, that is my bad, tell Jenna, I'm sorry. The staff report is not in the package, my apologies. That's because it was sent twice, because her and I were playing phone tag, and then the second one, she was only asking on the presentation, so that's my bad. So we will circulate that, but at quick glance, the presentation covered most of those things, other than, like Sam mentioned, there's some additional pieces that are added that aren't that aren't necessarily detailed in the presentation, but we will send that around to council tonight. So that's my bad. Sorry, Jenna and Sam.
Okay, I would like to comment or ask a question first, then make a comment. Commercial, obviously. Does that mean that this is resale? Or it is at all, or is there even a check about, like, is this an entrepreneur or is this somebody, do we know or do we care? Is that part of the
I,
decision?
I don't know.
Okay.
I would argue that it doesn't
Doesn't
matter,
matter.
because once the zoning is changed, the zoning stays with the land and not the owner, so
Fair.
even if it was somebody who met your criteria for a good owner, they could sell it to somebody else and the zoning would
Yeah.
apply to them.
I was just curious if it was an entrepreneur.
Typically, we make decisions or try to make decisions about the land and not about,
It has more to do with they meet all the boxes, check all the boxes to be able to rezone more than anything else, isn't it? Meet the criteria to be able to rezone.
sure, yeah, I guess with every application, we want to get all the information and like our role is to bring it all together and bring it before you to make the decision, so.
How do you feel, sir? Oh,
That's all.
sorry.
That's
Go ahead.
No,
I'll
I
let you
just
go
want to
last.
share, like, 'cause I know, like, I 100% agree with everything everybody said. To add to it, on the other side of it, I guess, is, I've got very close friends that own an indoor, growing operation, and it's in the same building as other businesses, and there's no smell at all. And I don't know why, or if it's just because it's not as big as like an organogram as an example. It would be very similar in size to this, but there's no smell, to the adjacent businesses at all. So I just want to put it out there because I know I'm not an expert either, but I'm just sharing from a experience perspective. I 100% have experienced this, and also go to the adjacent businesses to buy my pool supplies, and there's no smell when we go there. So I don't know. I'd be curious. I think we at least owe this gentleman a next step, a conversation or because it's legal, it's a growing business, like a growing,
It's
Business.
rural economic development.
but to the same sensitivities of water and our, the residents and all that stuff. It's not all going to smell really strongly, but I can't say that it will either. Maybe that's part of the conversation.
Because my only perspective is organogram, right?
Right.
It's a whole different scale though.
Yeah,
Right.
much
It's
different
different,
scale,
so,
You have your own
But-
power generating facility.
but I think too, like having the opportunity to hear from residents, to hear what they really want, I think we have to have that
absolutely.
to really know what the best course
And
action
it
is.
doesn't mean it's gonna go forward, right? So,
Yeah.
And I think that's important too, because it's not just, we talk about the residents that are relatively close to where this place is being proposed. But I think we need to hear from residents in general.
Yeah.
Because if we support something like this as a council after all the public hearings and so on and so forth, again, like, how do you say no, moving forward? Like, and even the individuals close to where I live. You know, there would be, I suppose if I were them, I would be looking at reapplying. Because, you know, despite a large portion of the residents who were quite vehemently against it. And I think the thing that I would want some clarity on, and I'm sure it's different now with the restructuring in the town. I do recall that when we had the public hearing and we were there, we were told by the planner at the meeting, the decision had already been made.
That wouldn't be the case in this public
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah,
And
and
so-
so variance or something maybe for the building?
No, it was the decision that they were recommending it. Those are the words that were used.
Maybe the,
And that there wasn't anything that we could do at this point in time, despite the public hearing, to do anything about it, hence getting involved with various members of provincial legislature and so on and so forth.
is it because there was only the PrAC before?
Yeah, so I don't know what the details of that application are, but I wouldn't expect, well, I don't know. I don't know how that happened. All I know is that there was a rezoning application at the time. And it was ultimately not approved, but yeah, I don't know who would have told you that or why. That doesn't totally make sense to me. I think it's maybe important to highlight that, I guess, staff giving a recommendation on a project. Perhaps at that time, or I think the staff are recommending for this project because it's in a rural area zone. If it's in a residential node, maybe that's a different question. And it's outside of the village of Salisbury where that's addressed more specifically. So.
Anyway, I'm just pointing it out there because I know
Fair enough.
I can ask another 100 people who will swear to it that,
No, not
because
that,
when we went there, we were quite aghast. We thought we were
Yeah.
gonna have the opportunity to share what we, you know, what our concerns, and literally we were not allowed.
yeah, I guess I'm just trying to say that this application is not that one and.
Okay.
The decision before you today is about this one, not about that.
Sure.
We can look at some of those details just because we had no involvement municipally on that, obviously, but we can look and chat with the crew at Plan 360 just to get a better idea of what came out of that process in case something similar.
From a scale perspective, and you may not know this, but I don't have a clue what 1,500 square foot facility can generate or not generate, but I'm assuming that they have to transport their product then to
Yeah,
somewhere else.
I believe that, Austin can maybe confirm this in the staff report as well, but I believe that they would have a delivery truck or a truck that would come to the site every, what did it say, 1 or 2 months?
2 to 3 months to pick up and deliver products.
Okay,
Yeah.
so not,
And the two or three staff that they have at the site, I assume every day, every working day.
Yeah, it just says applicant expects to have 2 to 3 employees daily and then delivery truck 2 to 3 months. As this is not a sales locations, visitors to the location are limited.
All right,
Let's hear it.
where is the better spot for this? Where should cannabis production go? Where in the province should it be allowed? That would be my first question.
Well, I think it's a great question, John, and I don't think it's a decision that we can make in a brief meeting here.
No, but that's my point. Where should it be put? And I see this as no different than any agricultural production. This is an agricultural commodity. This is a production facility for commercial agricultural production. So to me, any new agricultural facility, the setbacks and applications for that, whatever those criteria are, new barns construction, they have to have so much setback between properties. Or depending on what effluent, what have you, there are criteria already in place for any new production facility today. I don't know if this necessarily would meet that based on the size, scale, scope, that's to be determined. But then the question becomes, are new agricultural facilities allowed in the future? And that's where I have a problem with this, because if it's not for one product or one commodity, is it for all commodities that we're no longer allowed to do that?
Well, I think it's fair to say that this commodity is a little different.
No, that's a bias. It is agricultural production, period. You're growing a crop. Whether it's animals, plant, immaterial. It is a crop. It is sold for whatever purpose, that's.
Well,
What zoning is required for
Because-
farming though?
Rural area.
So it is different, it's a
It's the
different
rural area.
zone.
That's what it's zoned for. But on top of that, the effluent, the smell, all those issues are all associated with all agricultural production to different scopes and different degrees. But that's why I say you have to be careful with how you're gonna go about this, because this also applies to all farming. Hands down. And if residential areas are the only ones that are gonna be the focus for all things in the province, we're gonna have a problem. Again, 85% of the province is trees. That's why I say you have to say, where is it gonna happen? Is it gonna happen in the commercial areas of the cities, a la organogram? Or is it allowed to happen in the rural areas? Outdoor, indoor, immaterial. That's why I say you have to take into consideration the whole route and application of all of it, because you're talking about agriculture.
If they were growing lettuce, would they have to change the zoning to
Um,
build the building?
If it was indoor.
if it was,
Hydroponic
Yeah,
indoor.
likely not, I may need to look into the details, but
It would be a commercial building,
one of the, yeah, it's probably,
so they would have to.
it's probably the case where they would if they had the same kind of level of facilities. If it was outdoors, they wouldn't, and that's also true of cannabis. They could also grow the cannabis outdoors.
Which would have a bigger smell.
Interesting question.
It is an interesting question.
Yeah, I think
Very philosophical.
what I would like, what I would propose, what I'm gonna do, you guys can do your own voting, is I'm not willing to say no. I'd like to hear what comes next, hear what the residents have to say. I think our residents are getting more creative on how they make money for their families, which we also need to support. This is somebody that's going to potentially employ a couple of people. Maybe in our area, maybe not. Could be my kids, it could be somebody's aunt or uncle. I just think we need to be open to it. It's legal. It's legal in Canada, and there's large rules and regulations, like you mentioned, the Health Canada is very regulated on this stuff to get licenses and things like that. I just don't think we should close the door on it. I'm not saying yes right now, but I just think it's worth a discussion.
But we're far from saying yes to the.
Yeah,
the
that's right.
Project still.
This is strictly just going forward.
Rezoning.
Decision on what to
Yeah.
do, public hearings.
I think it's great that we have residents that wanna make money and bring jobs.
No,
No
I
matter
wanna
how
hear-
big.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
But
No,
I wanna hear what people think. So, sure we will.
Additional questions? All in favor? Three minded?
So who was nay?
Joe and me. The motion carried, and we'll move on to item number 2. We have a busy night tonight. Rezoning introduction, 3041 Main Street, Salisbury PID 702-86610.
So, yeah, so separate and second rezoning and redesignation application, this one to rezone from a residential use zone within the town of Salisbury to industrial zone to allow the operation of a motor vehicle repair and inspection shop. So this property, I didn't include a larger context map because I thought that you might be familiar, but this is Main Street, so it's just after the bridge that was under construction this summer. Is it still under construction?
It'll probably be under construction next time you're doing.
you had to bring that up.
Waiting for construction.
he's right there.
You all know where it is.
So we do.
This is the zoning of that property. So the yellow color there is the residential use zone. So the typical residential zone that you have throughout the town. The pink color is the industrial zone. So the abutting lot to the north there is zoned industrial today. In the residential use zone, a vehicle repair and inspection shop is not a permitted use. I guess the bylaw does try to enable some home occupations, which are typically businesses that happen within the home or an accessory building that are kind of compatible with residential use. But the bylaw is very specific that an auto body shop, construction equipment, recreational vehicles, motorcycle repair shops are not considered within that home occupation use. So they can't happen in the zone and would have to be rezoned to the industrial zone to allow the use. This is the site plan that was submitted by the applicant, so I apologize, it is a little bit small, but I guess what it's showing is there's an existing home there, existing residence, and then an existing garage. So the vehicle inspection shop would be within the building that already exists there. And there would be parking provided in the front of the garage. I think there's probably space for 4 or 5 vehicles there. Here's a couple of photos of the site from earlier in the summer. And again, there is also policy in the plan that talks about industrial use. So this is, again, similar, where the plan has identified some areas that are more appropriate for industrial use, and the main area for that is the Trans-Canada Highway interchange area. And then it also sets some standards for industrial designated properties and the types of, setbacks and conditions that these uses would need to meet. So this application, it's already, it's gonna happen within a building that already exists. And that building has been, looked at by a structural engineer who wrote a report and said that the building is appropriate for that type of use and for the public coming in and being considered an industrial building. So in terms of building code, that's been looked at. And then, because the property is beside an existing industrial parcel, it's thought that adding another industrial use here would probably have less impact because it's already near an industrial zoned parcel than it would if you were to just, redesignate a parcel that's already in a residential neighborhood. And then finally, there is some language and some policy in the municipal plan that speaks about this kind of economic development and encouraging some amount of mixed use within residential areas. So again, same situation with this application. We're at the very beginning, the first stage, and the decision before you is to decide if you want to move through with the public process, pass a resolution to set the date for the public hearing, and seek the written views of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee. Okay, that's all I have. Happy to answer some questions.
Thank you.
And so for this one, we do have changes to the dates that are in the package. One of them is the time, and then I think we're gonna switch the date to December 12th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So then that will change that. And to your earlier question on the consolidation is a date that we're penciling in for further conversation as well. So I do have it written just to make sure that we get the time and the date if someone would rather read it this way instead of memorizing that top of mind.
Oh, Joey would like to.
Which date are you replacing?
The December 30th.
Or
December 30th, yeah. It will also, this was supposed to come to council earlier, but there were some delays from a building inspection side of things before it went to for temporary use perspective. So this will make sure that we can keep it moving too. Yeah.
So I'd like to move that whereas council has considered an application from Rodney Trites to amend bylaw number 50, the Village of Salisbury Municipal Plan by changing the designation on a portion of the property known as PID 70286-810 from residential to industrial on the future land use map. And whereas council has agreed to consider rezoning a portion of the property from residential use to industrial. Be it resolved that the council of the town of Salisbury directs that the appropriate bylaws be prepared to amend the municipal plan and zoning bylaw as it pertains to the above noted changes, that the proposed bylaws be referred to the Southeastern Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for their views, that the notice of intention requirements of the Community Planning Act be fulfilled with respect to the proposed amendments, and sets the council meeting on Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers at the municipal office, 56 Douglas Street, Salisbury, New Brunswick, as the date, time, and place for the public presentation of council's intent to amend the municipal plan and set a special council meeting on Thursday, December 12th at 7 p.m. at the municipal office of 56 Douglas Street, Salisbury, New Brunswick, as the date, time, and place for the public hearing to consider public hearing of considerations of the objections to the proposed bylaws.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Dykstra, seconded by Councilor Colwell. Questions to the motion?
I do have a question. Oh,
Go ahead.
why would we not take the opportunity to zone it as village center now? And why industrial?
So, yeah, I can answer that question. The part of the reason why it has to, or why it's going to industrial is because the business is also includes like large semi-tractor trailer units.
Okay.
And the bylaw is specific that type of use is only permitted in the industrial zone. It's not in the.
So if it was just cars, it could be village center.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that asks my next, so when you said 4 to 5 vehicles, that's 4 to 5 transports?
Yeah, that would be 4 to 5 regular
Okay.
vehicle stalls. Yeah.
Thank you. And there's already a temporary variance on this
Yeah,
property
so
that is
sorry,
operating.
maybe I should have provided some more of this background, but there was a separate application that went to the Southeast Planning Review and Adjustment Committee for a temporary use, and that application has been approved. So currently, the garage is operating under that temporary use permit.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to make sure council was aware of, so that,
I was gonna ask that question.
so if it does come to public hearing, there would be at least they would see it operating and understand.
For sure. Thanks for that.
How it's
clarification. And then,
operating,
yeah, to provide further information, I guess that was passed in September, so it was a period of 1 year. So I guess September of 2025 would be when that temporary use expires.
Is there any concern where it's directly adjacent to a waterway?
Yes, so again, similar to the last application, we have reached out to all of those same provincial departments. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to put it in the slides for you today because we didn't have those answers at the time when I made the presentation. But I have received the answers since, and those folks have gotten back to us. So if this goes forward, all of this information will be presented to you in reports, but I'll tell you today that, yeah, we've heard from those folks and there wasn't a concern. I think we did get some comments that if petroleum products are being stored on the property as a part of the business, that they would need to meet some provincial standards. In all of New Brunswick, anything that's within 30 meters of a wetland or a water course requires, would require a permit or approval through the province to build there. And this site is outside of that area, so it's essentially, it's okay by their lens, yeah.
And are they allowed to continue to use it as a residence when it's zoned industrial?
Yes, so the application would only be to rezone the portion of the property where the garage is located, so the house would still stay zoned residential.
Isn't that very interesting that you can have one PID that's zoned
Yeah.
2 different things without a subdivision?
Fire hall's like that.
It's
Fire
not-
hall.
Is it?
It's not an ideal situation, but yeah, it does happen from time to time, and from our perspective, like if somebody was to come in for a building permit, something like that, we're able to, that's grounds for us to say this is permitted here and not here, just based on the mapping of the zoning.
You're proud that I knew about subdivisions. This is a technical question. So they have a temporary rezoning, whatever it's called. So are they paying, like, you know how when you have a business in your home, you pay double the sewer fees? Like, are they doing that with that temporary?
It's not connected to sewer in the garage.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah, that was one of our initial questions during the temporary use side of things, was why we needed to know it from a unit perspective, but
Mm.
2, we wanted to make sure that commercial like mechanic waste wasn't being discharged into the system.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was the structural engineer actually in their report that confirmed that there are no drains attached.
Okay, so like their office, like they've got an office addition, they would still go into the house to use the washroom.
Yeah,
If there's
yeah.
any employees working.
Yeah, so as I understand, there's not currently a bathroom in the building at all.
Okay,
That might be a building code requirement for that.
right,
Basically, anytime you change the use of a building, you have to get a building permit for that.
right.
Because, yeah, in this case, it's a residential garage and now it's being
A
considered
commercial,
an industrial,
yeah.
commercial building. So they may need to add a bathroom at a later time, but yeah, if that was the
Okay.
case, then that system.
Then that triggers.
And same thing for us.
That would be
Yeah.
separate, yeah.
Okay, that's all I have.
Additional questions?
Are we able to put conditions in that approval where it's on Main Street to maintain certain appearance standards or?
And we will get Sam on this one.
Yeah, essentially, there, you are able to impose conditions as a part of the rezoning application. I guess I don't know what that would look like to, I guess, impose some kind of like form and character or visual appearance.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of what?
I'm just
that would
thinking
look
that
like?
automotive shops, you tend to have certain things laying around and to try to prevent messy appearance.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Tires.
Let the bylaw officer have something to do with
That
it.
is a good point.
If there's conditions on it.
If we put conditions.
Yeah, it's something we could look into and bring to you in the next iteration of this, but I think from a zoning perspective, it might be a little bit challenging. That said, something that I've kind of tentatively started to recommend in the report is that something that we do sometimes is tie people specifically to the site plan that they've submitted. So basically we say any future use or development of the site has to match what you've said it's going to be. So in this case, we have a location where the parking is located, a number of stalls. So if there's more parking or I guess a different use than what's shown there, then they're essentially not in conformance with their zoning bylaw.
Tie their hands with it.
Yeah, tie them to that site plan. Yeah.
Interesting, might be better to put those types of things in a bylaw, like for those zones maybe. Versus individual properties.
It depends on to what extent, I think, like, you can certainly get to a point. If there's pile up of tires and everything else where it can go onto the dangerous and unsightly route, I don't think a commercial business would go there, like get to that point, but I've seen stranger things. You could go through the, what's that called, the residential occupancy standards, but that's for homes, not businesses, right? So anyways, that's something, we'll have to explore that in consultation with what conditions might look like.
But we have in the past, and this way you can do it for certain areas. If you have one blanket one, then it's can't look at it specific to that area. Do you know what I'm saying? If you have it open and we do it each one, then it depends on where you could have school that you want to deal with. It's not the same as if it wasn't in a school. Like, so if you do them individually that way, you can kind of fine tune it the
Control
best
it,
you can, control that. Yeah,
We'll look at what some options are.
that's all part of the
So,
process.
so what happens in the event that we don't approve the zoning request? He has to shut down the business?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
My things.
Additional questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, there's no closed session this evening. We'll move on to item number 6, mayor and councillor statements and inquiries. I just have one. We, in last week, lost a resident who was a frequent visitor to the council chambers. We do not get very many visitors to our chambers as part of democracy, which I do encourage all residents to do so. So I'd like to, on behalf of councillor, pass on condolences to Mike Carrier's wife, Tammy, as well as her son, Drew. Mike constantly challenges us all from a democracy perspective, really in the good spirits of making the town better. So condolences to the family. With that, I'll pass it on to other councillors. No other comments. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Councillor Salinas, second by Councillor Thorne. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. We are now